Imagine two very different tasks. On one hand, you have a team trying to patch a minor software glitch in a corporate accounting app. On the other, a group of scientists racing to engineer a vaccine for a global pandemic. Common sense tells us the software patch is easier, but Google co-founder Sergey Brin operates on a counterintuitive theory. Solving the massive existential problem is actually practically easier than fixing the minor one. Think about it. A project aiming for a 10% improvement in efficiency doesn't exactly get people out of bed in the morning. Mundane frustrations suffer from a visibility gap. They don't inspire fierce dedication, so they often just linger unresolved. But when you aim for a 10x improvement, a true moonshot, the sheer scale of the challenge changes the equation. That massive target creates a gravitational pull. It draws in elite experts who want a meaningful challenge. It unlocks vast pools of venture capital, and it manufactures an intense urgency. Audacious ambition acts as a calculated operational strategy for mobilizing human and financial resources that small problems simply cannot access. There is a catch to this paradox. Unchecked ambition, without any grounding in reality, easily drifts into science fiction. You can throw billions of dollars at wildly futuristic ideas, and you might successfully build incredibly advanced technology. But if that technology ignores core human needs, you end up with highly engineered, completely pointless inventions. This leaves us with a critical tension. How do we harness the raw, mobilizing power of that 10x ambition while making sure we are actually solving real human suffering instead of just burning capital? A valid moonshot has to be aimed correctly from the very beginning. Before anyone develops a technological fix, they must deeply understand the devastating reality of human loss that requires solving. Once the right problem is identified, the most successful projects turn to a specific methodology used inside Google's Moonshot factory. They attack the absolute hardest part of the problem first. They call this the monkey-first strategy. If your goal is to eliminate traffic accidents by building a self-driving car, human safety is your hardest variable. If you cannot solve that specific, likely-to-fail component, the entire project must be killed immediately. In this framework, ending a project isn't a defeat. Celebrating early failure is actually a deliberate feature of the system because it stops teams from draining resources on unworkable ideas. True world-changing innovation demands a unique pairing. It requires the empathy to identify the right problem and the operational ruthlessness to shut down the wrong solutions quickly. Rigorous engineering resids are useless, however, if no one is willing to start. High-risk innovation depends on a culture that believes progress is actually possible, yet that belief is currently under threat. When we are surrounded by a constant cycle of bad news, we risk falling into a despondency trap, a state of passive fatalism. Breaking out of that trap requires empirical evidence. That is exactly why researcher Max Roser founded Our World in Data. This chart tracks global extreme poverty. 2 centuries ago, over 90% lived in deep poverty. Today, it's less than 10%. Similarly, a second line tracking global child mortality drops from over 20% down to under 4% today. When looking at the harsh, crowded reality of past centuries, it's easy to assume suffering is a permanent fixture of the human condition. But the data proves that massive systemic change is entirely possible. This documentation of past success serves as the vital, required fuel needed to sustain the audacity of future moonshots. We can see this fuel at work in effective altruism. This movement applies that same 10x moonshot thinking directly to resource allocation, hunting for what they call extraordinary charities. For example, instead of funding an average aid program, they analyze the data and find that a highly targeted $200 investment in insecticide-treated mosquito nets yields a return of a whole year of human life saved in malaria-affected regions. We saw this same rigorous approach during the pandemic. The Oxford COVID-19 Government Response Tracker combined a massive global scale of citizen scientists with precise evidence-based data collection to evaluate which policies actually worked. When audacious ambition is steered by equally rigorous data, it creates a virtuous cycle. Capital and effort are efficiently transformed into undeniable human progress. Which brings us back to our opening paradox. Solving a massive global problem feels like it should be harder. But as the Apollo 11 module sitting on the moon's surface proves, A monumental challenge is the only thing capable of activating an entire ecosystem of elite talent and funding. To drive the next wave of progress, we need a cultural shift. We have to stop settling for 10% incremental tweaks and start demanding 10x systemic solutions. That requires adopting what historians call the improving mentality. This mentality asks us to hold two conflicting truths at once. We must accept that the world is currently awful in many ways, while simultaneously acknowledging it is demonstrably much better than it used to be. And that leads directly to a third truth. Armed with rigorous data and unwavering ambition, the world can be much better still. We must study the world's problems to know exactly what needs fixing, and study our historical progress to know the impossible can be done.